All right, so we're going to wrap this up with our final shader for today, which is the displacement shading. I'm going to close this down, and again, I'm going to create a new sphere. I'm going to move this one out here, move it up, scale it up, and we got something to play around with now. All right, right click, hold, go down to assign new material, and for this one, I want to play around with another Arnold shader AI standard surface. Nothing's changed. It's all the same for all of these. Crank the color all the way up. Change the roughness again to 0.5. And this time, what I want to get into is displacement shading. So the geometry is not necessarily what I'm going to play around with right now. And to get to the displacement shading, what I'm going to do is first name this displacement shader. Once I've got that named, I've got my adjustments made here. I'm going to go to this, and this is going to take me to my output connection. And it creates basically a surface shader, SG, which is a shading group. And I have a place to put a displacement material on this. And so I'm going to go to this. I'm going to choose a file. And again, it says I can go to add a displacement value, or I can click on this. And this takes me to a place where I can put a file. And I'm going to locate my file. It should be in my source images with the rest of them. And this one, I'm going to go back to a displacement shader EXR. Remember this guy from before? So we talked about how it was a black and white image. The whites show the high raised areas, and the dark show the lower, deeper, darker areas, right? And so this is what I'm going to use. Make sure it's EXR again. I'm going to click open, and it automatically switches over to raw. Notice that nothing shows up here now because the material is just going to be too much for this to appear. Like it's not going to work. So we'll have to actually render it later to see what it's going to look like. Okay, so now to look at this, let's go ahead and just render it out and see what we end up with. So if I go to IPR, oh my goodness, what just happened here, right? It turned my sphere into a block, right? So if I choose this and hit 3, it takes it even a step further, and now I have like rocks and things protruding from the sides, and it just doesn't look right. And so what I have to do is go into this object and make it and bring down the scale of this this material. So I'm going to go to displacement shader here, and I'm going to go to my outputs, and I'm going to start looking at the scale for the displacement shader 1. And I'm going to go to the scale right here and put in 0.5 and see what happens. And so now when I've done that, it brings it back down to the ultimate like sphere shape, but I also still have, and you can see what's happening with the rendering because it takes up a lot more time and space to render. Kind of end up with a little bit of a cropped view. But when you look at it here, let me zoom in on it. What happens all over, like it happens, like it protrudes, actually uses the data in that file and creates the actual raised and lowered areas of the sphere. This is great for like super realistic kind of rendering without having to go through and model maybe every single rock and stone. Of course, this is going to take a lot more time and effort for rendering once it comes to this. You can even play around more with how much do you actually want to show. If I do 0.2 on the scaling, it's not as rough, but I still get a good kind of textured feel when changing the scale like this. So this is going to be what we're going to get ourselves into with more modeling and texturing with our kind of side projects in class. But take some time, learn how these things work, And this is great material to use for the course. Now, if I take this and want to add another object or another, let's say that surface material on top of it, you most definitely could do that by going to Color, File, and then choosing that first one that we had. If you remember, we had the difference file that was used. I'm going to use that difference 4K file up here. And if I go to apply it, now it makes sense. Now I know how to make all of this come together. This works for both displacements. Now you can see it looks like another surface shader, but I don't know until it's rendered because it's just too much memory it consumes too much in your work view. But now I've got like a full blown scale of what these maps really look like and what they mean, and how you can possibly use them to your advantage depending on what it is you need them for. So that's pretty much it. And this is what we're going to practice, and this is what we're going to apply to our next projects.